Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Leandra Michael. I am the current Savannah Jaycees president, and tonight we are hosting a panel talking about building strong communities. We have several community advocates in-house, and we are so excited to get their unique perspectives and learn what they think a strong community means and really get some tips on how to do better in our everyday lives. We will have a question and answer at the end, so feel free to engage in the chat box, and thank you so much.
So, hello everyone, how y'all doing today? My name is George Seaborough. I am the Executive Director of Chatham Savannah Citizen Advocacy, and it's my job here to make sure that the conversations stay on track and have a steady flow. The first thing that we're going to do today is give each of our panelists and guests an opportunity to introduce themselves. We will start with Zelonia first and end on our end there.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Zelonia Williams. I am the Executive Director of Future Minds Literacy and Adult Education. What we do at Future Minds is we assist those individuals who are 16 years of age and older obtain a high school diploma GED. Now, I know you're wondering, what does that mean? How does that look if a person has dropped out of school? What we do is we come in and assist them with assessments, reading materials, et cetera, to better prepare them for the world. In addition to that, I am a serial business owner. So I am the owner of Patches, which is a company that customizes patches, whether it be motivational, inspirational, company logos, things of that nature. In addition to that, I am the owner of Celebrations Unlimited, which is an event planning business here in Savannah.
Cool. My name is Scott Cleavland. I am director of a small nonprofit called Urban Fix. We bring together people with need and people with ability, addressing housing issues all across Savannah. I have spent many years in the missional aspects of the United Methodist Church, which is what actually brought me to Savannah. I've been here about 20 years. And I also am chair of the board and an advocate for citizen advocacy. And it is one of the great parts of my life, making all the connections that have come through citizen advocacy. So I'm here to speak about all of those issues.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Coco Papy, and I'm the Director of Development and Communications at Deep Center. Deep Center is a nonprofit here in Savannah that connects, that has young people connect their lives to their learning and their learning to their lives. And we use art and writing and cultural organizing as a way to affect systems change and to also affect narrative change in the city of Savannah.
Hello, my name is Clint Edwards, and I'm a casualty of the 2020 election. Well, kind of. I was running for 2nd District County Commissioner, but that didn't pan out, which has been, kind of bittersweet actually, and I've been able to focus on some of the other things I was working on and will continue working on. I'm currently on the board for Chatham Area Transit. I'm the chairman for the Stakeholder Committee. It's a very tiny committee, but we like to think that we're doing some good. I'm also the owner of Starlandia Supply, a new and reclaimed art supply store in the Starland district.
And Clinton, we're going to have the first question to you. So, do you see a correlation between transportation, art, and community?
Whoa, okay, say that again.
Do you see a correlation between transportation, art, and community?
Yes. If I could probably draw a correlation from just about anything you throw at me. Specifically, what I see in that vein is storytelling. So community, I think that one's too broad, so I'm gonna throw that out. But the transportation and art, what we're talking about there is access. And I think both of them share a challenge in getting the right people engaged in it. I think transit has a challenge of who is it serving and who can it most help. And I think art has a challenge of who is it serving and who can it most help. I think also transit and art are both sometimes cast aside as not being really important to economic development. And I would say actually both of them are extremely important to economic development. You can't really have you can't have an authentic building of a neighborhood without art being pivotal to that. In the same vein, you can't really grow any city's economy without having some sort of equity in transportation, and the basis of that is transit, specifically state-sponsored or city-sponsored transit.
Wow, thank you. And Coco, would you mind talking a little bit about the policy brief that Deep put together recently?
Sure. So in 2019, Deep Center released a policy brief called Our Stories Are Evidence. And it was 6 recommendations for the City of Savannah, the County Commission, for the school board, and also for administrative change at different social and human service organizations across Savannah. Our goal is to essentially kind of tap into juvenile justice and now criminal justice reform in the city and in the county. I think sometimes we think of criminal justice reform or juvenile justice reform as this very specific legal thing, right? And I really want people to think of it as like a public health crisis, right? What we at DEEP always try to remember is that behind every behavior is an unmet need. And so something that we were always kind of pushing for at the policy level is, what is the root cause of something, right? Ask why 5 times. Like, well, why is a student acting out? Well, if they're acting out, why could that be? Like, what is missing? What do they need? And so I would be happy to sort of send out the link for the policy brief and the 6 recommendations. But I will say the biggest ones that we are sort of focusing on right now is we're really vested in the idea of sort of expanding on wealth detention in Chatham County. Up until recently, Chatham County had the highest number of court-involved youth in all of Georgia. So highest number of court-involved youth in all of Georgia out of the 159 counties that we're in. That's higher than Fulton, that's higher than Gwinnett. So I think now we're only 3 or 4, which has happened recently because of the work of our amazing juvenile court and also the different social service organizations that work with them. So we're really vested in seeing how policing can look differently in Chatham County. We're really vested in seeing how we can sort of make breaks in the school to prison pipeline. We're really vested in seeing what ordinances we can pass at the city and the county level and at the school board level that is going to make Savannah and Chatham County a more fair and equitable place. So something that we're really thinking about now is what does it look like to decriminalize misdemeanors at the city level or the county level? Like, what does it look like for young people to have a restorative process as opposed to going directly to juvenile court or being arrested? So that's sort of what we're focused on right now.
Thank you. How involved are the youth in your program in creating the policy brief?
Absolutely. So we have sort of 2 tiers of how we create our policy. I also just want to preemptively say that like policy feels like this really sort of abstract concept, and it often is. It again, like public transit or art, it kind of is like we need to ask like who is it for and who is also creating it. So at DEEP, what has been really important for us is that the majority of our policy comes from our youth spaces. So we have something at DEEP called the Action Research Team, and it's made up of youth who sort of have decided to focus on researching different things that harm them and their communities and their families throughout the year. And then our adult policy side, which is not only myself and Luis, our community organizer, and Dare, and Rafael Isa, our community engagement manager, but also this team of folks who work in nonprofit and social services and the justice system, and just a sort of huge team of people who are kind of seeing things at all different levels. We sort of take those 2 spaces and we combine them to kind of come up with the policies that we're really vested in.
Wow, thank you.
I just want to point out, it's the Action Research Team. The acronym is ART. If I remember correctly, the Deep Center started out as a writing program for after school. It started in the arts, and that's how it built trust in this community. And then it's been able to I think, transformingly and incredibly pivot into social justice and apply all of that trust into something that we really, really desperately need help with.
And the last thing I'll say is that when I start talking about policy with people, I see their eyes glaze over, and rightfully so. It's like not everyone like lives, breathes, and loves policy. Like it's the stuff that excites me in the morning. But what does excite people is art. And young people talking about art, and young people talking and writing about their experiences. And so what's really powerful is that, yes, we do have these policy recommendations, and we're happy to talk about those reforms all day, every day. But it's when our young people talk about the way that affects their lives and it impacts their lives that like people actually get it. So I think, again, it's combining art and policy and who is making those decisions and like who is listening to those things. And it's a beautiful, messy marriage that we're really proud of.
Thank you.
And one of the things that I always liked is coming to hear the kids read. This is such a disconnected community sometimes. it's great to sit there and see the whole community watching these kids that otherwise wouldn't have that stage and voice just powerfully delivering. I mean, it's an incredible thing.
And to build a little bit more on connecting the community, can you share a little bit how one-on-one relationships and Citizen Advocacy Forum help build out community?
So with Citizen Advocacy, which has been around for about 40 years, what we do is most simply people that are on thin ice are connected with people that are on thick ice. And we try to figure out ways to build larger connections across the community. As a matter of fact, rather than just saying it out loud, I actually brought this just to read it. I said, a valued citizen who is unpaid and independent of human services creates a relationship with a person who is at risk of social exclusion. The citizen advocate chooses one of several ways to understand, respond to, and represent that person's interests as if they were the advocate's own, thus bringing the partner's gifts and concerns into the circle of ordinary community life. And when I was asked to participate, one of the questions was, what do you think one of the biggest problems are facing Savannah? And I say we have too many silos and not enough connections. It's like this is a town of islands, and it's like there are way too many islands. And one of the things that I think citizen advocacy does very well is getting into the community and finding those people that just simply have a need. They may need a payee, they may need a friend, they may need somebody to check in them at the nursing home, especially in this time of COVID. If you're living trapped in some nursing home, you just need somebody banging on that window saying, hey, I'm Scott and I'm here. Also, relationships need to last for a while. So sometimes you can just jump in and fix something, but for real change, for there to be what we call a real beloved community of equal opportunity, equal justice, sort of equal love across the community, it has to last for a while. And one of the things that I've loved about citizen advocacy is it's completely voluntary. It almost fights structure to its own detriment. I always say it's a great idea. Sometimes as a nonprofit, it so wants to be flat. In other words, individuals out caring for individuals, we don't need this whole structure. And so one of the things I really love about citizen advocacy, and what I would challenge everybody, is to get out to that part of the community you've never been to. I'm always amazed with the work I do with housing. I'll bring kids from one part of town that have been here their whole lives. Neither their parents nor grandparents have gone into that neighborhood on the other side of town. And so I think I came to this with sort of that kind of calling to get out there. But citizen advocacy and serving as its chair, I'm just seeing this whole this flat network. And of people and individuals, wealthy lawyers, cool teachers, hip folks hanging out with different kind of people. And it just makes this mesh that in little ways is sort of making this place less silo and less island. So.
And Zelonia, have you seen education be used as a tool to bring people closer together or help them move to the next level of life?
Absolutely, but I first want to give my pilot awesome job, because I can see how we can collaborate. I can see pretty much how everything is structured there, because my program is somewhat of the same thing. There's no rules. We break rules. Good. On the record, we break rules. But
good trouble.
Good trouble. Exactly. But it's because the population that we serve. And yes, I do find that collaboration and partnerships with individuals like those who do not fit our cookie cut, they are ideal for our program. And so most importantly, working with individuals within the community has definitely put us on a platform where we're able to now find additional funding. We're now able to find individuals that we probably would not have found prior to. And so I think building with individuals like you and like everyone here on the panel, it would strengthen future minds.
Good. And so, Clint, I'm going to come back to you. What do you see one of the greatest challenges in our community?
There's a lot. I thought that was an interesting question, honestly. I thought it was, there's a lot. It's hard to, I think it's, and if you guys have identified those, I think that's fine. But it's, I seem to have a problem with the question, George. I find it to be too focused on finding a thing, and there is no such thing.
So let me ask a different question. What is the greatest asset that Savannah has?
George, that's a great question. And I was hoping that it would be flipped around like that. I think honestly, one of the biggest challenges is that sometimes we look at things too negatively. And one of our best assets is being able to, humans are incredibly ingenious, have such ingenuity and such an ability to see things in different ways and be able to apply what they learn in new ways given a new situation. I think I've seen that, well, I know I've seen that here in Savannah through different organizations, through friends that I've had, partnerships that are both very structured or very non-structured, very hierarchical or very flat. One of the best assets is our people. And I think in order to get through some of the challenges that we do have, really it's about uplifting those around us. And so I would say one of the best assets in this community, and definitely one of the best assets in my life, are the friends around me and the associations I have. So they might not be people that I'm spending, every night with or, time on the weekends, but, it's like with Scott here, like that relationship that we have is really cool and very strong. And really with this whole panel here, just to be able to reach out and make those connections and make stuff happen. So the people, at the end of the day, people is what makes up any city. And reading the Jaycees Creed, the second one from the last, is Earth's great treasure lies in human personality. I have to agree with that.
And so, I don't know to call you Courtney or Coco. How did you introduce yourself?
Coco.
Okay, Coco.
Why are you out here giving my government name out? Such a better name. Why are you doing that?
Follow along with the same theme. You can either talk about the challenges that you have seen or about the asset.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that
He's always bubbly, so you can be a little more.
Great, thanks. Bringing in the doom. No, so I think that we are in a really I am not going to say unprecedented because I'm so tired of hearing that word. We're in a really strenuous cultural moment that I think is going to sort of define who we are as a community for a very, very long time. I liken challenges to if you open up a trash bag, you will find something to fill it, right? And that is not to downplay our challenges, is that what it is to say is there's a lot. And I would say the challenges that I focus on sort of the day-to-day basis are systemic challenges. So like looking at the bones of which are legislative and administrative systems that sort of dictate how we operate in daily life, what traffic laws look like, how we go to court, like when we go to court, like just all how we operate in schools and in offices. So all these things that sort of make up the social norms that we live by, right? But those social norms and those legislative norms are not equitable. Some of them are rooted in very racist practices that go back all the way to when this country was founded. And I think we have to be really clear-eyed about looking at that in the face right now, especially in this moment. And I think we have to be okay with being really uncomfortable, right? I think one of the things that I think about on the daily is how one of the greatest challenges I think that we sometimes face as a community is that we see things at a tertiary level and we're really frustrated by it and we get angry and we yell on Facebook and we do all the things that we do as people because we're frustrated and we're upset by something. But I think what happens is sometimes in the best case scenario, you have great people, the asset of Savannah, right, who create something in response to that, right? You create a program in response to literacy. You create a program in response to people being left out of society. You create a program or you create systems in which public transportation actually serves people in the way that would be best for their lives. People respond, right? So that is our greatest asset. But I think sometimes what also happens too is that frustration just kind of sits there and we don't necessarily always take it the step further of being like, well, why is it like that, right? Like, well, why is it that you're technically considered an adult in the state of Georgia if you're 17 years old? Why is that? Why is Georgia only one of 3 states left that tries 17-year-olds as adults? Why is it that we, up until very, very recently, still shackled children in the courtroom? Like, why? So I think it's asking those questions about things that are challenges and trying to get to the root cause of something as opposed to just reacting to it and responding to it. That's not to say that those things aren't completely valid, is that we have to kind of figure out how we go a step further so we're not just in sort of constant outrage. Because I think what I see a lot of right now is we are exhausted and we are outraged, and those things are all completely valid. But I think that what I always sort of ask of people is, what is the next step you can take, right? And it could be creating an organization and having a direct service, or it could be doing a policy thing and advocating for legislation, right? And there's so many different lanes, and as long as we're going to the same place with different methods, that's all that matters. Like, we all want a better, more equitable, and more fair and just Savannah. I think we can all agree to that, right? Please say yes.
Yes. Well,
it was really fun.
Scott, before I give you the opportunity to address the question, there is a question from Facebook. Coco, people would like to know, how can they get involved with policy change?
Absolutely. So I think the biggest thing is identifying, like, what is it that sort of gets you up in the morning, right? So maybe criminal justice or juvenile justice reform is like not your thing, but affordable housing is, or education is, or art is, or public transportation is. Like, if there is something that excites you, there are policy decisions behind it. And I think you can start at a city council meeting, you can start at a county commission meeting, you can go to the state legislation. All these things are going to look really different because of COVID, and they're all actually, I think, going to be way more accessible to people. You know, before our most recent city council administration, city council meetings were at like 3:00 on a Thursday. Like,
Yeah.
I can't go to that. Can you go to that? Actually, you could go to that. Never mind. Don't listen to help.
Self-employed.
Like, never mind. Don't ask them. But it was not as accessible as it could be. And I think, props to our current city council for making it far more accessible. But I think because of COVID, and because it kind of seems like we're going to keep going in this, those spaces are going to be more accessible online and through Facebook and through Zoom. So I think people are going to have more opportunities to participate in those processes.
And to follow up with Coco, the reason I know George Seaborough and I'm sitting here as chair of citizen advocacy is because a decade ago, I was completely annoyed because if I look left down my street at Waters Avenue between Victory Drive and 37th, it has been a decaying mess for decades, and it drove me nuts.
Tell us how
So
you
the
really
policy, but again, to follow up, policy doesn't have to be that big, huge
Really
thing.
doesn't.
It's just look down your street and say, that bugs the crap out of me, and I'm going to get involved with it, and then see where those tentacles go.
Yeah.
Just see where those tentacles go. So.
Whoever gatekeeps around policy and makes you feel like you don't know enough to be around it is not the person you need to be talking to. And frankly, they should know better. Like, policy is really for everyone, right? And again, like, it might feel very removed from everyday life, and it might feel like you have to be like, have 13 different types of academic degrees, and you really don't. I went to art school, kids. Like, I'm here doing policy. It's possible. I highly recommend it.
And one of the things citizen advocacy is about is getting uncomfortable. So I would say first and foremost is just go get uncomfortable. I think sometimes we're so comfortable in our island that, since we're a town of islands, we're just so comfortable on our island, we're not even aware that we should be bothered about something.
Right.
And so if it's something like Jaycees, where you're in an early part of your career ready to become leaders, get bothered by something. And if you're not, go find something to be bothered by. Because there's plenty out there. I'm not being as positive as you are. That's fine.
And Scott, first, before you address the question about what are the challenges or the assets that you see in the community, do you mind staying a little bit on that particular topic and share the story about how you and Irv try to grab a drink downtown?
All right, yeah, so when I advocate for a young man by the name of Rashawn Donahue, and great guy, his parents are older, he's about 22. When his parents pass away, I'll become probably legal guardian. But through knowing Rashawn, I got to know Irv Tate. Irv is a theater manager for AMC. He's ready to go back to work so much he can't stand it. And he lives at Stillwell Tower. And I'm going to tell you, if you have never been to Stillwell Tower, you must go. So if you're seeking something to bother you, go to Stillwell Towers and see that people in wheelchairs live on the 20th floor. So I got to know Irv, and one day Irv said at 33 years old, I've never been out for a drink. I'm like, and he's one of the socialist, coolest people you ever went. So we did research to find out where in the world is a bar in Savannah that you can go that you don't have to have stairs or a ramp. They're virtually impossible to find. And so we ended up going, this is an advertisement, but the rail you can get into flat on the yard, and we had a great time. And one of the things Irvis wanted to do is he goes, I should put together a travel guide as to how do you go around Savannah in a wheelchair? You know, like, how can I thoroughly enjoy Savannah? I had never thought about that. I mean, I know the sidewalks in this town are awful, but I just never thought about that. And that just sort of has grown into a friendship. And so to me, all it is two guys going out for drinks, but it's that connection has sort of given some kind of not only a purpose to Irv, but Irv's able to show the community sort of where its failings are. We're a social town. What is it, a small town with a big drinking problem? And Irv in a wheelchair can't even get out there and do it. So I think sometimes back to policy, I think it's, sometimes I love hearing Coco's educated passion. And for those of us that aren't at that level, just find something small and make it happen,
And do you want to share what you believe some of our challenges are in the community?
Well, again, I think one of the challenges are there's so many people doing good, and we have such the town is so, like, there's a woman I met when I first moved here. She's in the 80s. I go to church with her, and she goes, my mama said, you never go west of Whitaker. And that was sort of a profound, and I said, would you ever go west of Whitaker? And she's like, well, not really. And this is a sweet little old lady. And back to your history, that's 100 years of history. And I think one of the strengths is there are a great lot of loving, giving, caring people in this town. And I think what we need to do is just connect together a little better. Drop the walls, drop the silos, and just sort of connect a little better. So.
And Zelonia, to give you opportunity to speak on the challenges or the assets that you see in our community.
I'll say both. For me, working in the trenches all the time with heels on from an educational standpoint, what we're looking at now, it is what we call a huge issue. I can take an example of yesterday, just having a parent totally frustrated with the fact that her child is online. One, she's what we state is illiterate. And then secondly, you're dealing with a mom that technology, it's just so foreign for her. So now you're dealing with, she's not able to help her child read, but on top of that, there's a technology issue. So now she's saying, well, what do I do in this situation? Well, one, you can start the program, but at the time being, this daughter needs assistance. So now I'm assisting both mom as well as her young kid. But when it comes down to a lot of the challenges that I'm finding is those persons who are not afraid to go in the trenches, not afraid to go on 37th Street, not afraid to go on 39th Street. I speak on this often. If we don't do something about it, it's going to show up at our front door. And that is the correlation between education and crime, is if you don't know better, you don't do better. So I am very passionate about the population that I serve, because there are individuals who need a second chance. There are individuals that I deal with that had a murder charge. They had a robbery charge. I'm not afraid to go in their home. They trust me. And I say that for anyone, if you are able to volunteer and assist and help as far as comprehension skills, things of that nature, help that individual change their life, because if not, we're going to deal with a monster that is so much bigger than what we can control. What I can say is the up to that is we now have a mayor now that he sat with me at the table and he's saying, what do you need from me? Good. What can we do to better your program? The program works. It clearly works, but the issue is who will sit at the table with me to make sure that we are not afraid to go in the trenches. It's going to be very uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we address the special population before they come on the opposite side of Whitaker to do that takeover. We don't want those issues. So Let's address those issues now. Let's take care of our business now so that we're doing what we have to do so that we don't have to do what we got to do later.
Can I add something onto that? I think like you brought up a really important point about like people wanting to do better even if they have a record. So I think there's something really important to this. So at Deep, we're strong believers in restorative justice, and we believe that when you serve your time, and you deserve all the chances when you try and come out and make a better person of yourself, right? One of the things that's happening now at the policy level at the City of Savannah is that the CARES Commission, which is one of the commissions that Mayor Van Johnson established. So there's the Race Equity Task Force, there's the Reentry Committee, there's the LGBT Committee. This specific committee sort of looks at different sort of policies that will help sort of make life easier for folks who have served time and are now reentering into the world. Georgia has one of the highest recidivism rates in America. We also have one of the most profitable probation systems in America. Recidivism, for folks who might not be sort of familiar with that terminology, it just means sort of like the probability of reoffending, and people reoffend because they don't have opportunities. And so one of the things that this commission that we have locally is doing is working on what does an effective ban the box policy look like at the City of Savannah. So we have one established, but now the commission is looking at, well, what do these practices look like? What does it look like as like an ordinance? Like, how do we enact it? So I would say, like, if this is something that interests you, I would just call up your council members and be like, hey, I am in full support of a ban the box policy at the City of Savannah government level, right? What are other policies that could be enacted to ensure that private businesses and nonprofits and different businesses in Savannah could follow suit? So I think, again, it's sort of like, this is a really good example of like, you're meeting the direct need, right? Like, you're on the ground in the trenches meeting the direct need, but then there's a root cause of like why like you were having to do that. So what are the things that we can ensure that would make the process more fair and equitable for people who want that second chance?
And just to add, it's a terrible feeling when we as an individual, once you take away everything that we possibly can have to make sure that we move forward, and our hands are now tied behind our back, our eyes are blindfolded, and there's literally nothing we can do at some point. I don't care who you are. You're gonna do whatever you have to do for survival. And if you tell me different, I can look you in your face and tell you that you are a lie. That's just not how it works. And so for this individual to have the urge to feed their family by any means necessary doesn't make it right to steal, but that child is still hungry. Of course we say, yes, there's resources, but what if I get there at 3:30? What if I get there at 4? You know, it's just, or can't get there, you know? Now I tell my students now and my participants, I'm like, hey, the bus is free. There's no excuse, say that. But I can say that now. But in a couple of months, hopefully and prayerfully, well, maybe a year, I'm probably scripting it out, things will change. And so I will be able to say to them, hey, this is what you have to do. This is how we're going to accommodate you. And this is how we're going to move forward with a plan in place. But in the meantime, between time, I would love to see more individuals understand, have a clear, genuine understanding of what this specific population is encountering. They're not here because they want to be here. It may have been something really, really, really drastic that happened in their lives. Things that we cannot control. Like, I have a 9th grader taking care of his mom who's dying. And he has what other alternative? Go where? You want me to sit in front of the screen and talk about what when my mom's screaming in excruciating pain? Or you have another parent that's telling him to go out there and sell whatever you can, which may include drugs, to make sure that we make rent. So these are some of the things that are not really presented to us, but we pass judgment on some of the actions that are being done in our community.
And a very important topic was just brought up around transportation. The bus system is now free, but that would not be the case in the future. Mm-hmm. Clint, I know at one point in time you served on the CAT board.
Can't be.
Yeah, and I was just about to ask, is there any creative?
I'm on CAT board now.
You still are?
Yeah.
So is there any creative funding structures being put in place to help out?
Well, it's the will of the people. Anything's possible, and it does cost money. Also, I want to, and I'll wrap this into my answer with this as well, is I realized the answer that I had, I think, was a bit of a cop-out as well. Yes, people are great, they're all great. But I think one of the main challenges and one of the best benefits of the city is is the design and the layout of where we live and where the jobs are. And so I think one of the major challenges is the suburbanization of Chatham County, urban sprawl in our low density areas and low density housing. The further people are out, this just make a lot of quick geometrical sense. The further apart people are, the more expensive it is to provide services for them. So if you've got 30 people that all live fairly close together, you can service all of them with one bus. If you have those same 30 people stretched out on 5 miles of road, it is a lot of money to provide them with a bus and a street and a water line and an electrical light and an ambulance and police and fire. So what we really should try to be focusing on is developing zoning laws. This is, but not everybody needs to focus on this part. But what I like to focus on and what I like to think about is zoning and land use. There is absolutely a way forwards for CAT to be providing transit at whatever level we want it at. If we want buses riding down every single road every 15 minutes, we can do that. It'll be god-awfully expensive, but it is possible. There is no plan in the books right now to provide fare fee transit without another income source. If that income source came from increasing our millage rate, which is currently at 1.15 mils on property taxes, I would be in support of that. That would be maybe $20, $30 more per average household, which I think would be a huge benefit because what's the biggest problem with getting kids to deep programs? They can't get there. What's the biggest problem to so many really cool resources in town is people can't get there. So yes, it is a possibility. I think we should look at some different creative funding sources, but what those are, I'm not really sure. What is happening at CAT right now is we are right-sizing our routes. So there will be some route reductions due to COVID-19 and also just due to some of these routes just simply aren't productive. And at the same time, you've got buses that are running around with very few people in them. And then Route 14, we can't put enough buses on Route 14. So we need to right-size our routes right now.
During COVID-19, I think that's the strong statement within itself. I would give each of you guys probably about 2 to 3 minutes to talk about how COVID-19 have affected your organization. Starting with Coco.
Fantastic. So all of our programming is virtual. We all are working from home as well. In a lot of ways, this has made what we do far more intense, but we have a really strong programs team led by our director of programs, Keith Miller, who have really been able to respond to some insane challenges that I would say that COVID is not presenting for the first time, but is really kind of lifting a veil on, right? I think what COVID has sort of made very, very crystal clear is that we have long operated with very strained social security nets, I would say, especially in Georgia, and I would say also in Chatham County. I would also say that it's had to make us rethink a lot of social norms, like in-person office space, and like, is that the best environment for people to work in, or for, our school buildings always the best environment for some youth as opposed to other youth. Another thing that we have been really sort of watching is how COVID has been treated by not only our local jail, which I do want to commend Chief Wilcher for releasing 300 nonviolent persons from our local jail at the very beginning of COVID. To me, this is policy reform, right? Whether we kind of want to name it that or not. What that shows us is that we actually don't need to be incarcerating that many people, right? That we can actually have online probation hearings. We can have online parole hearings. And what that might do is actually make a lot of people's lives a lot easier. So I think that, again, like COVID has done things that have really, really deeply challenged our program staff, and I would say also other members of our staff. But in a lot of ways, I think what it has shown to us, as well as the different sort of organizations and courts and systems that we work with, is that if we actually do things differently, we can see progress, right? So that's what I say.
Here, Scott.
The two first, from the work I do in housing, we have been partnering with Family Promise, which is a well-run nonprofit here in town. And COVID-19 is both because of economic reasons and the inability to gather people together. I think homelessness has been a bad thing in Savannah for a long time. I think it's going to get worse, and it's becoming more expensive to be here. And so part of the work we've been doing is taking land bank houses that have been derelict and converting them, renovating them into housing for short-term transitional housing. And our hope is to sort of keep rolling and doing this so that families can live somewhere to get like I said, you got to get the rent together, you got to get your bills paid, have some time to come off the street, live in residential, your own house, send your kids solidly to a local school, and give some time to get the money saved. And COVID has exacerbated homelessness and housing. Also, the city of Savannah is hot real estate. Because of COVID, people from New York, Chicago, you name it, want to come to Savannah.
Yeah.
So I don't see real estate getting cheaper in Savannah anytime soon. So I think along with transportation, we really need to think through housing with our zoning, density, all kinds of things with housing. With citizen advocacy, because we are individuals looking out for individuals, very flat, as I've said before, for citizen advocacy, our challenge has been the state is cutting budgets everywhere. So when we talk about financing these policies, a rough economy leads to less finance, less coming from the state. So we're having to think creatively on funding sources, also building a deeper and broader connection of small donors, people that are, again, this one-on-one kind of thing. Also, we're finding that our advocates, and you can be a citizen advocate in a lot of ways. You could be a friend, you could be a payee, you could simply be an individual that's fighting for somebody's housing, or somebody that knows how to raise Cain in a nursing home. We're finding that with COVID, people at risk are now doubly at risk. And so having just one person looking out for one person, again, pulling from thin to thick ice, has been really important. And I think it's gotten more needed and more intense with COVID-19. Again, like you talk about education, or prisons, COVID has just made everything more complicated. So.
I definitely agree with everyone else on the panel. We have several struggles. One is transitioning virtually. It has been definitely a beast for us, only because our program, unfortunately, we're not able to sustain a lot of the technology that is needed for us to go totally online. However, we've been using Zoom. Zoom has been working for us. Financially, my God, our community is who supports us. And so a lot of our events, at least 3 of them throughout this, our fundraising months, we're unable to have those events. And so that pretty much made it to where no money's coming in. So how are we creative? We're creative by now having a social distancing fashion show. It's where everyone have on their mask, and there's literally, as we would have normally 150 individuals, now we have like maybe 25 to 30. So if you think about that, we want to increase the cost, but we already know what that would do, right? But this is a hint for anyone. In addition to that, the challenges that a lot of my students are having, they're not tech savvy. And it's a huge issue for us. Oh, well, this is what you do at Zoom. This is how you log in. It's one of those things where we're looking at the 101, the basic that we're giving them. So we're spending more time with the tech issues that we're having as opposed to learning. So it's extending the time that they have to even be in the program. Wow. In addition to that, because we are housed on all of our college and university's campus here in Savannah, it kind of take more so of the focus of them transitioning to college now. Although some of the colleges are open, I just don't feel safe that my program is out there. I don't want it to be where we are all infecting each other, things of that sort. So I would prefer for us to continue to work online. There's some that needs one-on-one. So we have a little safe house. so to speak. So I'm helping those persons who would like that one-on-one that they're used to. We spoil our students in hopes that it would expedite the process of them graduating. It works, but at the same time, we're just thinking of all creative ways in which we can make sure that the students are successful as they transition through the program.
Sure. And we're almost at 10 minutes before we close. I want to give each of you all an opportunity for closing statements. This time we'll start with Scott.
Wait, that sounds like we're, do you guys feel as if you're president in the
Presidential
courtroom?
debate.
Right.
That's definitely what they say in a courtroom.
Well, one thing I wanted to follow up with on the technology is, because of the way budgets work, I have a feeling the school system henceforth is going to try to download as much to technology as they can physically do, because I think it's cheaper, and unfortunately that's often goals. So I have a feeling technology and lower income families and the connection for the internet and having that kind of technology available is a very important policy, period. Not just in COVID, because I have a feeling it's going to last that way for a long time. Just one of the things simply in closing again is, since the Jaycees is an organization that's about community and about taking your business experience and building it into the community, one of the things, I'm a Methodist, first preacher to show up in Savannah was John Wesley, was down at Christ Church. And one of the things he always taught was that, number one, don't trust organized church. That was sort of a pretty good thing. And number two, he always said that we're all on a path to perfection. And people used to say, well, how am I on a path to perfection? And John Wesley would say, well, if you just keep doing what you're doing with a degree of love and care in your heart, that pathway will eventually just roll itself out. That's something that I've always thought. Sometimes I'm clueless at what path I'm on, but I figure if you just sort of do the right thing, ask the right questions, be bothered, be bothered, then that trail is going to sort of get you in the right way. Of course, since Chadwick Boseman passed away, when I heard some of these excerpts, he reminded me of John Wesley. And, he literally said, I just want God, when he looks at me, to say, did you use every talent I gave you? And he said, I just want to be able to say, yes, I used every talent I had. And that's the path, as Boseman said, we're put on. It's just to give everything you can. So anyway, that would sort of be, I just think we all need to just get out there, walk that path, and see where it goes, and run into people and get to know people. And anyway, that would just sort of be, more connections, the better. So.
Coco.
I would say be curious, not judgmental. I am exhausted by the amount of sort of judgment I see currently, and it's just, it does not serve us at all. I fundamentally believe that, I think Bryce Stevenson said this, that we are all more than the worst thing that we have ever done. And I think that's something to sort of hold close in these times when it feels like we are all being tested and how we show up. But I would say find something that lights you up and then be incredibly curious about it. Before you go, when you create your own thing, ask who else is doing this work, because you'll be surprised at the amount of people who are sort of doing that work. And finding those people, when you do, it's like all of a sudden kind of finding the people who speak your language, right? And it just makes things so much easier, right? You don't feel so isolated. And then I would say the last thing to, I'm in a real Bryce Stevenson sort of mood these days, but how we treat the poor, the incarcerated, the marginalized, the most vulnerable amongst us is sort of like that is our reflection, right? So we as a culture, I think, just always need to hold that close, especially now, because it just feels like everyone is on sort of the razor's edge, and it's only going to get fundamentally more intense in the next few months, whether that's through COVID, whether that's through an administration change or not change. That's terrifying. There are lots of things that are putting people's lives at stake and have continued to put people's lives at stake. So I would just say to show up as your fullest, most imperfect, messy self, and just show up nonetheless, and show up curious.
Clint.
I'm going to kind of riff off of what Coco was saying as well, is that how we treat the least of us is reflection of our how we're kind of doing as a society. I think also if you haven't figured that out and you need more of an economic argument to make it make sense for you, and you haven't maybe figured out that we should just be all pretty nice to each other. I like to think when COVID hit and our bus ridership dropped by 70%, and think about that. So COVID hit, bus ridership dropped by 70%. So who's riding the bus? Somebody who's riding the bus in the middle of the pandemic really, really needs to get wherever they're going. They might need to, get to their job at Walmart to sell you some strawberries so they can feed their family. They might need to get to a critical medical appointment. They need to get where they're going. It is, it is not a joyride. You're not just riding around on the bus during a pandemic because why not? It's extremely important. And so I think we gotta sort of reassess these things that we don't center as much as I think we should. I think transit should be one of those. I think art and its ability to bring people together and to tell stories, all of us in some way are kind of involved in something artistic. Really everybody is, whether or not you think about it. I think that's really important to sort of center some aspects of our society that are not as centered as they are. I think transit should be the beginning of all conversations on transportation, and instead it's sort of road funding and cars. I don't know what my last point was going to be, but just be a good person and vote. That's all.
I'd like to. I remember one of the first times I met Clinton, we were at some transportation thing and everybody was rubbing their hands about transportation. And I literally looked across the room and I'm like, how many of these people in this room have ever been on a freaking bus? So what I would say is everybody at the Jaycees, go ride a bus one day.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
I'm not saying
on.
get on a bus, ride it somewhere and ride it back and talk to the people around you.
Ride it on the waters route.
Yeah, that's a great route.
Don't take Route 14 because it's full and we need that for people that actually need it. But do find a route that's less ridden and
You'll get bothered by something riding on the bus.
but yeah, that's all I got to say.
Zelonia?
I too agree with everyone again on the panel. Ask questions, be curious. I state that because you want to know, hey, you know anyone who left a high school diploma GED? Ask that question. How are you doing today? But really, really have a genuine interest in how you're feeling today when you ask that question. Ask, okay, do you need employment? It's okay to ask that question. I was raised in a home where you mind your own business. Don't worry about what other individuals say and what they're going through. And a lot of that I honestly see in my community. We lock our doors, we close our windows, and I'm not saying this literally. I'm saying this to where we keep the outside world outside and we go on day to day just worrying about our own household. That's not how it works. Ask questions. I want to know, George, do you honestly know anyone who lack a high school diploma GED? Send them our way. Right now, it makes absolutely no sense at the amount of individuals that are contacting me about dropping out of school. And this is at the 8th, 9th, and 10th grade. There is an issue in our community. There's an issue. They're opting out. They can't, this whole virtual thing is getting very icky for them. It's very uncomfortable for them, and it's showing now. So my thing is, it is very important, and I'm talking to everyone that's listening and those individuals who will be listening later. Please make sure that you understand that it is your business to mind oftentimes others' business to make sure that we are together successful. Because if you are just successful, at some point, you're gonna cross paths with that individual. So my thing is, again, please make sure that you ask questions, that you are curious, that you wanna know, that you wanna help your neighbor become better. Because it's our duty. It's what we are here for. It's our purpose. So definitely, yes, ask questions, be curious.
Well, I would like to say thank you, everyone. At this point, we'll return it back over to the lead of the Jaycees to close us out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So on behalf of Savannah Jaycees,
I just want to say thank you to the whole panel, Clinton, Coco, Scott, Z, Zelonia. George, thank you so much. We really appreciate your insight, your perspective, and definitely your time. This recording will be available later on, so please tune in. In the age of social distancing, this is how we engage and connect with the community. So stay tuned in and have a good night. That's it.